Hi, it's Chantel here from Fiberific. On this channel, we like to talk about all things yarn craft related. I'm talking spinning and knitting and crocheting and dyeing and anything that you can do with yarn. If this is something that you think you're interested in, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't want to miss out on any of our live videos or any other videos that come out. In this video, we are talking my top 5 tips for knitting lace. And at the end, we've got a bonus tip as well. My first tip is stitch markers. I'm at the school of use stitch markers for every single repeat. Designers will state specific places that they want you to use stitch markers. So I would recommend having a couple of different types handy. Now, when it comes to stitch markers, not all stitch markers are created equal for lace. You want to make sure you've got something that's small, that isn't dangly, that's not going to catch in your yarn and possibly damage your knitting. So something very sleek, small, thin, and as close to your needle size as possible. But there's nothing to say that it can't be cute and fun at the same time. Tip number 2, lifelines. I highly recommend using lifelines. I've been knitting lace for quite a long time and I still use lifelines because things happen. Needles come out. Do you have children running around who will grab at your knitting, or a dog that might chew through the end of your cable? Possibly, possibly not. You might be more organised than me and not leave your knitting laying around, but mine is left around. And things happen. If you've got a lifeline, every sort of couple of inches of work, or every time a chart changes, every time you think something's going to happen that you're a little concerned about, pop a lifeline in. Tip number 3. Knitting needles. Now, I know we all have our favourite brands and our favourite types of knitting needles, and that's totally fine. But when it comes to knitting lace, you want something pointy. You want something with a nice tapered point on it. You're going to be knitting a lot of stitches together. You're going to be making noops. You're going to be doing lots of yarn overs, and you want to be able to pick those things up quite easily on the next round. Also, with your knitting needles, you want to make sure that you've got a nice join. So it doesn't matter if you're using fixed circulars, interchangeables, or too long straights. You want to make sure that however these needles are, there are no burrs, there's no way for it to catch. So if you've got a rough join or something like that, I would get a different needle because you're working with pretty fine yarn that a burr or a catch could actually rip an entire strand and could damage your entire project. So make sure you've got something nice and smooth. Tip number 4, pattern management. Now that's just a fancy way of saying, how do you like your pattern? I personally like mine paper. I like it printed out. I like to be able to write all over it, scratch all over it. I use sticky notes to line up where I want to be able to see. But everybody is different. In this day and age, there are so many excellent digital ways to do this. I also like a draw board that I use on my Surface Pro. I find it to be really helpful. But I know that there's lots and lots of different ways, different software that you can get to manage your pattern. But whatever it is that you're going to use, test it out. If you're going to be going away somewhere and you're not sure about power, print out a paper version. You'll be safe. Downside of being reliant on your paper version is if you lose it, you've lost all your notes, which is why I go onto Ravelry and pop anything pertinent in. If I think I'm not going to be able to pick it up for a day or two, I'll actually pop in and write notes as to where I'm up to and what I've noticed, so that when I go back to it, I can have a quick look at Ravelry and then move on without an issue. Tip number 5, where do you start? So the first thing that I would do after getting my pattern is actually hit wherever it is that you bought the pattern from and double check that there's no updated versions, no errata, no comments from other people that have made it that will put you off, that will make it hard for you to make this pattern yourself. So double check before you cast on. After I've done that, and I know I've got the most updated copy of my pattern, read every single page. You don't want to find on page 9 that you need to change needles and you don't have them. You don't want to be stuck and waiting, especially if you're in a really good flow. So make sure you read the pattern all the way through. If there's a stitch you don't know how to do, it gives you time to look it up. If there are items that you need to purchase that you weren't aware of, you can get them. My bonus tip for lace knitting is blocking. You need to block your lace. You totally do. it will change your lace. You'll look at it and you'll stretch it out, and you'll be able to stretch it out and have a look and go, that looks really nice. But then the second you let it go, it bounces back, and that's what happens. So you need to either dry block or wet block depending on your yarn, and then you follow the instructions for the design or the yarn and lay it out in the method that they require and pin it down until it is dry. Then when you take those pins out, it doesn't spring back. It holds that beautiful drapey shape. You need to make sure you've read the instructions from the designer about whether to lightly block or aggressively block. And that will also depend on if you've used the yarn the designer has recommended. The advantages of blocking not only mean that you can pull it out and see at the open lace work even more, it also helps to minimize the movement in the yarn while you're wearing it. So that means when you put it on your shoulders, it stays on your shoulders. It's not shrinking against itself and pulling against itself. It will sit however it was blocked. I hope these tips help you along in your knitting lace journey. There'll be some more videos coming out shortly, going into some more detail with a few of these. Don't forget to click like if you've liked it, click subscribe if you haven't done so already, hit the bell if you don't want to miss any future videos. It's time for you to get your crafting on, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.